Good morning, everybody. It is a little bit after 7 a.m. here in Chicago on a Saturday. Beautiful morning. Today, going on the last long run of this marathon training block. On the menu, we've got a 2-mile warm-up and then 3 times 1 mile float, 4 miles at marathon pace. So we'll have 15 miles of work, 12 of those at marathon effort. And then, depending on how we feel, maybe we'll round up from the 17 miles to 20, but let's see how it goes. So far it's a little bit on the chilly side, but I'm thinking once we get moving, it'll be just right. Let's go. Today's workout was 3 times 1 mile float and 4 miles at marathon effort for a total of 20.08 miles once the warm-up and the cool down were taken into consideration. A big run for me today. I'm definitely tired now, but I suppose in the big scheme of things it's okay because after this run today, I guess I have one more run to round out the week and then I'll technically be in the taper. By the time this video goes up on YouTube, we'll be exactly 2 weeks away from the LA Marathon. Whew. I'm ready for this race, I think. I mean, I still think that there's some work to do during the taper, and by work, I mean there's like some things that I'm hoping will happen. Not necessarily that I'll be working a ton, but we'll get into that. But first, let's take a look at some of the numbers for today. So I've been wearing the Garmin 945 LT and pairing that to my heart rate monitor and my foot pod. And I'll be doing a review on the Garmin 945 LTE shortly at some point. I mainly got the watch so that way I could do some testing with the full color maps that it has. So I haven't really had the time to do a lot of trail running and getting lost and that kind of thing. So the review is forthcoming, but for the meantime, we're going to look at Garmin Connect, which is where is one of the ways that you can look at the data after the fact, after you've done your run. So if we take a look at my computer, we can see on Garmin Connect that I set this run up as a workout. So it would be like a 2-mile warm up, 1 mile float, 4 miles at marathon effort, and repeat that 3 times. So then after the first 4 miles, another 1 mile float, 4 miles work, 1 mile float, 4 miles work, and then cool down for the rest of the time until I made it basically to 20 miles on the day. I'm very happy with the numbers today. There was a pretty significant wind out there. So for a lot of the miles that I was doing work at, I did have a tailwind, which was very nice. But for at least probably 4 of the miles that I was doing marathon effort at, I had a really strong headwind as well, or basically the same wind, just facing the other direction. So it's not like I had all tailwind miles today, although I would not have minded if I had all tailwind miles, to be completely honest. So if we look at some of the numbers from Garmin Connect, we could see that the first 4 mile block, I averaged 639 minutes per mile with an average heart rate of 159, which is exactly where kind of I'd love to be. It's on the lower end of what I would expect for marathon work, although it was the first kind of work set. So that makes sense. It's kind of like early on in the race, so to speak. The second 4 mile block came in at 6 minutes and 34 seconds per mile on average, which is very fast, much faster than my goal pace of about 6:45 to 6:50 per mile, aiming for a sub-3 marathon in LA. And then the average heart rate was 164, which is right around the range where I'd like to be, between like 160 and 165 for my marathon work. Again, that's at the higher range even though it's kind of early on in this run. So it's not the best heart rate number, but then again, I'm running a lot faster and a lot harder than I think I should be for marathon work. So I think the numbers overall makes sense. And then for the final work block, I had an average of 6:37 per mile with a heart rate of 169. And so we're getting towards the end. I think at this point it was like ending at mile 17 or so. So that heart rate starts to make a little sense. It's a little bit high, but then again, you know, I am running a little bit hotter than I should be. Overall, for the 12 combined miles of marathon work, I was at an average pace of 6:37. So feeling really good about the numbers where I am today, and overall feeling pretty strong. Now, the one thing that I'm missing from this data, and that's kind of annoying about Garmin Connect, is even though it's compatible with my Stride footpad and I can see my power numbers during the run, when I go back to look at the data after the fact, the power numbers don't show up in like the same charts that I just kind of showed you guys. And I would love to see like what was the average power number for that 4 mile block. Now I can still go look in Stride and the Stride Power Center to kind of figure out that average myself, but it'd be nice if it just kind of like added an extra column to put that power number in there. But I think that where I'm averaging for those blocks for today was probably in the low 280s, which I think is a little high compared to what Stride thinks I should be doing my marathon work at, but right around where I think that my marathon power number is. I think my marathon power number is probably close to like 277, 278 to 281, 282, I think is like a nice sweet spot for me in terms of doing marathon work in a race type situation. So I feel like overall, you know, I have a little bit of tweaking, a little thinking that I have to do in terms of my overall race strategy, but I think that the numbers are exactly where I want them to be, feeling strong going into the taper. So now the rest of the time for today, I want to talk about kind of two things. Why I did the run that I did for today, kind of like my thoughts going into it. And then also I'm going to talk about, you know, what are my hopes for the taper coming up. So first let's talk about why I chose this run today. Last marathon build going into CIM. My last big run was 3 weeks out from CIM, and I did a 22-mile run with 4 sets of the 4 miles on and 1 mile float. And for me, like the float is about like a minute slower than the marathon effort. And so that ended up being like 16 miles of marathon effort. I felt like the workout, like, I don't want to say it flew by, but it was a good workout. I enjoyed the workout, but it still did feel like a lot. And where my energy levels were at last week, I felt like it wasn't gonna be a good day if I did that, and I thought it might kind of do more harm than good. So I did 10 miles at marathon effort as part of my long run. I think I did 15, 16, maybe 17 miles for last week's long run. And I felt like, even though it was a little bit slower than I would have liked, I felt like I got a really good amount of effort in, and I think that was the right call. So that left me with this week for doing kind of like my longest run of the marathon block, and I at some point debated whether or not I really needed to do a 20 mile or 20 mile plus run during this training block. Typically I like to do many of them during a training block, and a lot of that's for confidence, but I'm feeling really confident going into this run. I had a really good CIM that really wasn't that long ago, and I'm still feeling strong, if not stronger, than going into CIM. So the confidence really isn't an issue like it has been in the past. So, you know, I really thought I might end it at like 17 or 18 for today, but I decided I was feeling good. The weather was fantastic in Chicago. So I've decided I would just like kind of round up to get to that 20 mile mark. And I don't think that that was all that more beneficial or worse, but at least I've kind of like checked that box in terms of like the marathon training plan. So I did get at least one 20 miler in during this build. But given the fact that it was only 2 weeks out, I didn't want to do a full 16 total or combined miles of marathon effort. So I felt like 12, even though it was like broken up into 3-4 mile chunks, was better than like, or built on top of the 10 miles at marathon effort that I did last week. And I did the same workout for my long run the week before. So I felt like this workout made a lot of sense for me, and overall it was one that I felt strong during. I'm very happy with the numbers that correlate to efforts really well. So like I feel like my kind of like internal like speedometer or power meter is like working really well, and so that gives me really good confidence again getting into the race type situation in a couple of weeks. So I wanted to have something that I felt like I was working hard, but also felt like I could still recover from quickly in the next 2 weeks. And that leads me to kind of my goals for the taper. So I have two main goals for the taper. And one is to stay sharp. Other tapers that I've done a variety where you basically kind of like slam on the brakes in terms of mileage. You go high mileage, high intensity, or, you know, relative to what you're able to handle. And then you hit the taper and it's like, whew, you know, you really cut down the mileage and you really cut down the intensity. And I don't think that does my body any favors. Yes, it helps it to recover, but I also think that it kind of like sends signals to my body and mind like, all right, work's over. Let's start to get into like kind of like hibernation mode. And so what I did before CIM and for the last couple of races is to kind of do mini workouts throughout the taper, just to, not because it's going to give me a really good like strength benefit or speed benefit, but mainly just so that the body stays sharp and it reminds it that it's like, yeah, we're still in work mode. This is still time to work. I'm feeling stronger. I'm getting more sleep. I'm getting more rest. I got more time, but it's still like heads down, time to work kind of mode. And so that's like the main thing I want to do is stay sharp. The other thing that I want to do is, you know, still recover and kind of like absorb and give a chance for the body to respond to all the work that I've been putting into it. The last 4 weeks have been 80-mile weeks, and the 4 weeks before that were averaging in the mid to high 70s. So it's been a lot of miles that I've been running. I'm on like a 62 or 63 day run streak at this point. So it's been a long time where I've been putting in a lot of miles, and the body seems to be handling it well. I did pull back about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, just a little bit from the intensity while I was able to still keep the mileage high. And I think that was like the right timing for that. And it feels really good. And it's definitely something that I'm going to try to probably replicate in future marathon training blocks, because I think it worked really well. And so just the idea is like, all right, let's absorb it all, get fresh, make sure I'm taking care of myself. So that way I'm staying sharp, staying kind of like eager to work hard and feeling like antsy to put in some work. And then also feel fresh. So the something is in the someplace, you know, as people, they say. So most of the hard work is done. Now it's just a matter of like not screwing it up over the next 2 weeks as we head into the taper. Now, before I go, I do want to talk about the charity runner of the week. This week, in lieu of a charity runner of the week, I donated $100 of my own money to World Central Kitchen. It's the 501c3 organization that was founded by Chef Jose Andres, and their mission is to provide food to people who are just in terrible, horrible situations. Right now, their big effort is to provide food on the Polish side of the Polish-Ukrainian border for refugees that are trying to flee the situation in Ukraine. So hopefully you will consider joining me in supporting these efforts by donating even just the minimum amount. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?